Welcome to the Heart of Dad podcast. Heart of Dad is a podcast for entrepreneurs who are passionate about their families and business and looking to find more clarity, more balance and more alignment in all areas of their life. Come and join the community at heartofdad.com or on Facebook at groups/Heart of Dad. This week on Heart of Dad, I'm interviewing Josh Bolland. Josh is CEO of JB Cole and a digital transformation specialist. He helps organisations increase revenue, improve efficiency and boost employee effectiveness through the effective use of digital technologies and a robust digital strategy and approach. Over the last 12 years of running JB Cole UK, Josh has worked on over 250 web and digital change projects with small and medium-sized businesses and a number of well-established brands and agencies around the world. Leading a team of talented and creative professionals has allowed him to bring these visions to life. In 2016 and 2017, he was awarded recognition in the BIMA 100 for achievements in the digital industry while still under the age of 30, and currently sits as Chair of BIMA Manchester, helping shape the future of the digital sector in the region. He's also co-founded Hertfordshire's leading digital network, DigiCluster, and co-hosts 9 others roundtables in Manchester. Aside from his business, Josh is also the father of 2 beautiful young children. So, Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, obviously, my name is Josh Bolland. I'm CEO of a technology consultancy in Manchester called JB Cole. So, our business primarily is involved in the kind of consulting and strategic implementation of digital technologies. And really, what that means is we work with businesses to identify and understand areas of their business that could be improved, and how we can help kind of take their business forward and especially into the future and compete and give that competitive advantage. And we do that by implementing software or implementing improved web infrastructure, big websites and things like that to help a business kind of take themselves forward and really improve things throughout. Started the business probably about 12 years ago now, which is crazy to kind of think about, but we started life quite differently. And I say it started out as me running the business originally as a photography studio, which is a very different guise of business. And then my brother and I joined forces in 2010. So it's about 9 years of working together now. And we're still working together. Just about, I think, yeah. But yeah, so we've worked together for the last 9 years. And throughout that time, we kind of brought together creativity and tech, which is kind of his background, and we really forged this direction that we took the business down, which is probably really where we've ended up pivoting along the way to become the business that we are today. So quite a journey that we've been on. And in the last 3 years, both him and I had children at pretty much the same time. So both of us have got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So to add to more pressures of growing a business and working with family, we extended the family out as well and introduced 2 little ones into our lives as well, which has been an interesting journey to say the least.
I bet. It makes me think that when I started my business with my 3 other directors, I didn't have a kid then, but two we became 5. 2 out of the 5 of us had very young kids during that period, and I now look back at it and think, wow, that is amazing to go through managing and building a company when you have very young children. It's quite a feat.
It is, and interestingly, actually, a lot of the team that we work with have kids as well, and it's always been one of those kind of things of, we're a business that, and we built the business around almost that kind of family mentality. We are a family that started the business. Our sister works for us as well. She's worked with us for the last 6-7 years. So a real kind of staple part of the company, and everyone that we bring in kind of feels like part of the family. And so, I don't know, this whole family thing has always been a really key thing for us. So kind of then having kids and making sure that we can have lives around the business that gives us a bit more time with the kids as well has always been crucial for us. So it's definitely had an impact and played a part even before we had children,
Yeah, that sounds amazing to be in a family business. I'm curious to know, like, what have you done as business owners to shape your business to be family friendly? How's that played out?
So we have always, and it's probably quite apt for now, really. So things like we always said we didn't want to work weekends where we can. So we've always tried to avoid working weekends wherever possible. Sometimes, obviously, as we grow a business, as you know, you have that time that you have to just do stuff, and we still do. Don't get me wrong. Sunday evenings I'll probably still be working. Some Saturday mornings I'll be up working, but what we've always tried to do is have time that would enable us to not just be in work mode, but to kind of be with the family as well. And whether that's always worked, I don't know. I think there is definitely a challenge with that. But then we've also done things like we were primarily a fully remote business for a while, which there was about 6-7 of us, and that was actually really difficult to manage, I found. So we then went kind of part office, part remote, and now there's a team of about 13 of us, and we've got a few people down in Hertfordshire and a number of people up in Manchester, and we work from home 2 to 3 days a week. And what that does is allows everyone, including ourselves, to take the kids to school in the morning, or pick the kids up in the afternoon, or do things like that, and just kind of have that bit more face time in the days, so you can go and take the kids to the park in the middle of the day for lunch, or go for a walk with them, or whatever. And that's always been really important, that we get that time away from the business. Even if we're working, we're still kind of present, and that kind of present part has always been really key, is that everyone that we work with, and that we've always had that time to be able to give to other people. Because I think in the beginning you probably take it for granted a bit, and you're probably spending a lot more time away from the closest people to you because you're always working, and we kind of, especially by having kids, a realization kicks in that you need to change that. So we've tried to get a nice balance in there as well.
I mean, you've had the advantage of, I'm making an assumption here, it may not be true, but you have quite a mature business by the time you had your children. Like, you weren't, some people I talked to, like the example I gave, were having children at startup time, which is crazy busy, really.
Yeah, it is, and it's interesting. I think we kind of did and we kind of didn't. So we've had different kind of guises of the business while we've always been just kind of pivoting along the journey. We had when I think it was about 5 years ago now, maybe 5.5 years ago, probably about 5 years ago, I'd say. I moved up to Manchester, and I'd always been down in London, and which is where I grew up. And then we had an office in London, and had another office in London. Then we moved to Hertfordshire, which is closer to where we lived and where we grew up. And then at that time, we had people kind of working fairly remotely, and would use the office as a base. Like every few weeks we'd have a meeting in there, and it was kind of, but the directors of the company used it, and it was kind of helpful to have that base. And then what we did at that point is we kind of made the decision, well, actually we've been looking at Manchester for a while. We had some opportunities that opened up, and we went, and my partner was originally from up here, so we had a lot of ties up here anyway. And we kind of just went, do you know what, let's take the plunge and let's do it. And it was around that sort of time, I think it was probably about a year in to being up in Manchester, maybe not even that, 6 months, I think. My partner then fell pregnant, and so that was like day dot almost in Manchester, Altrincham, which is where we first moved, just south of Manchester. We kind of didn't have anyone up here, and then we were having, and then I was, and my brother at the time as well was having a kid, and so while it wasn't startup mode, it felt like a startup because we had no staff in Manchester at that time. So we kind of, I think there's 11 of us now in Manchester, so within that time, even though the kids were kind of coming up into that time, it sort of did feel like we'd kind of gone back to startup mode. So it was quite a pressured time, definitely.
Yeah. I bet. Well, one of the things that I found a struggle was being able to switch my attention between my business and my family life, and particularly when my business was in kind of that growth mode, that I found it very difficult to switch off. I mean, I was probably a little bit obsessive, I would say, about it. And I'm just wondering how that's played out for you. Have you been able to, make the switch between business life? You've made that sort of conscious design around being able to take the kids to work, but what about kind of in your time at home? Are you able to move out of work mode seamlessly?
That's, I think, become the challenge of working from home solidly for the last 2.5 weeks because of the way we've built things. I mean, we'd literally just before we kind of had to, well, we took the decision to tell everyone to work from home about 2 weeks ago fully. We'd just moved into a nice new office as well, which is it's a real shame. So we'd moved into this lovely space, and we'd just got everyone really excited about it. And we'd had a new guy join us as well. So he was in for a day, I think, and then we were like, right, everyone, we're working from home. So it's kind of given me the realization again of what it's been like fully at home, and it's tough. Like, it really is tough. What we've been trying to do within the restrictions of government at this stage, we are trying to get out of the house to go for a nice long walk and take the dog for a walk and get the kids out and let them have a bit of a run around and do all that, and trying to find new spaces almost in the house to go and work so that you don't feel like you're always in the same space. And it's just trying to kind of make sure that you've got that differentiation between a work environment and a play environment and a kind of, a chill environment as well. And it's definitely challenging. That's definitely a challenge. And especially now with the kids being at home fully as well. My daughter's not a nursery at the moment. So she's often running in when I'm on phone calls trying to get involved in the conversations as well. So while everyone's in the same boat at the moment, it definitely comes with its challenges. So yeah, I think there's probably been times where I've really found it easier. I'm a real advocate. Sorry to labour on about this point. I'm a real advocate for this kind of both work from home and office. And so why I'm struggling again with fully working from home is because I think that blend is super important. And I think anyone that says fully remote is the way forward, I just don't agree with. We've done it and I'm not 100% bought into that. I think having an office environment that people can go to and collaborate and to build a relationship with each other and have a bit of banter and to talk about things that are just general idle chit chat, that's really important. And that whole it's not culture necessarily, but it's a cultural part of the business that is missed a lot from just being fully remote. And so when you do have, but then at the same time, what I don't want, and I don't think is good, is when people fully work in an office, because it's actually really unproductive time. It can be really unproductive time because of all of those other things, right? So there's idle chat, there's banter, there's all those things. And while that's important, a lot of the time it does slow productivity down, and it can be an impact on that. So I'm a real advocate for this balance of the two. So I think doing too much of one or the other is hard. I think that's hard. Going into an office, leaving the house at 7:30, coming back at 7, that's crazy. You don't want to do that every day. You don't have a home life really, especially with young kids. You won't see your kids, growing up. And that for me is just a big no-no. But at the same time, working at home all the time as well, you just go a bit stir crazy, and it really is hard to switch off. And I'm finding more at the moment that I'm getting to say 6 o'clock, and I'm kind of shutting the laptop down and I'm going, right, I'm off now, guys. See you later on Slack and things. And I'm doing, bath time and dinner with the kids and then putting the kids to bed and all that type of thing. And then we get downstairs and there's nothing really to watch. So me and my partner both sit there, we get our phones out and we're going, and I'm just going through emails and I'm, catching up on things that I've missed in the day, and I'm doing work mode again. And that's becoming, the lines are getting a lot more blurred again for me. And so that is definitely proven a challenge.
What have you done in the past, Josh, that's helped with that? It sounds like you've been through that experience. And before we started recording, you were saying to me that you had a pretty tough experience a few years back when your first child was born. What have you learned through that process?
I mean, I think definitely having that break, even when I work from home now, I work out of the home as well. So, for example, part of my routine would be, say, on a day that I'm working from home, I'd take my daughter to nursery, for example, in the morning, and then I'd go and work at a coffee shop. So I'd go and work at a coffee shop for, say, 4 hours, and I'd get all my calls done, and I'd get all my emails out, and I'd do all of that, and I'd have a bit of breakfast, and it would be a complete detachment from the house. and then I might go home and I might work at home for a bit, because the kids are probably a bit more chilled by that point. So it kind of becomes part of the routine again quite quickly. But just having that separation is really important. And then obviously if you've got, and I would definitely advocate to go and work in even a co-working space or anything like that, just so you can get that break away from home and work. And what I don't think you should do is just go into, even if you're doing a co-working, I don't think you should just go and sit in an office or a co-working space all day, because again, it's, what's the point? You've got the flexibility and the freedom, and we're proving now more than ever, work from home, most of us, or work remotely at least. So, we don't have to be in the same location all day. And I think a bit of variety throughout your day is really important. It just breaks up the continual parts of the day, and it kind of helps get that headspace, and you can kind of switch between environments. I think that's really key.
Yeah, I really hear that sort of is a theme in what you're sharing about kind of that the physical space creates mental space for you, being able to change physical space.
Yeah.
And do you want to say a little bit more, if you will, about what happened to you, when after your child was born? I think we'd love to hear.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think it was probably in the year after, I suppose, or maybe even within the first year of my daughter being born. I think the business was kind of building and picking up, and there was a lot going on. We've been taking on new staff in Manchester and building a great team of people around. But there were a couple of instances that probably threw me off track a bit. And so business became a bit difficult to manage at times. And then suddenly, you kind of go in, you're juggling this home life that you've now got this new beautiful little life that's very much in your hands, and you're trying to build this other kind of baby almost, which is your business, in a new environment. And I definitely had major struggles, and in terms of kind of coping, and I think I got to a point of burnout, total burnout at one point, where I just suddenly started getting massive anxiety attacks when I was in meetings, and all sorts of kind of things that I'd never experienced before in my life. And I've always thought that I was probably quite, in terms of my mental health, was always reasonably stable. I've never been one that suffered badly from anything, and it just knocked me for six. And it got to a point where I was really I had to stop going to certain meetings and changing the way that I kind of lived my day-to-day life, because I knew that if I put myself in a certain situation, just by the very nature of what was going on in my head, that I'd start getting a bit panicky, and then that would just get worse, and it would suddenly escalate, and then I'd be ended up in a position where I'm going, I feel like I'm having an anxiety attack. And that was really tough, actually, because it was something that I'd never experienced before as well. But also I'm trying to then, build a business and make money, and also look after my, my partner and my kid. And you don't really know what to do. It's really hard to actually figure that out, because there probably is some guideline somewhere, but no one says to you, this is exactly what happens, and this is exactly how it goes, and this is exactly how you deal with it, right? Like, there's no guidebook to tell you that, and so you kind of have to navigate it yourself and figure it out. And I know there are some great resources now that I've kind of been through that to go and seek advice and get help with and things. But I didn't know that then. And one of the things that I did, we run a lot of events up in Manchester. We do a lot of roundtable dinners called 9 Others, with 10 people around a table, and the whole idea of that is sharing something that keeps you up at night. And even in an event like that, I opened up about my experiences and was quite public about it, and that was really nerve-wracking, even in itself. I think probably I was sat there almost having an anxiety attack, thinking about it, talking about it to those people at the time. And the room was so receptive, and everyone around the room was, kind of totally understood what I was going through. And a lot of people had been in the same position as me. And yeah, it was really interesting, because just opening up about it and speaking to peers and people that had been through similar instances and who had kind of come out the other side of it. And it just made me kind of realize that actually being a bit more vocal about it and opening up about these things was absolutely crucial. And it just opened up a kind of whole new outlook on things for me. So I eventually, there are still things to this day that I know coffee is a bit of a trigger for me, right? And I love coffee. I'm a bit of an addict for coffee, so I had to stop drinking coffee for like a year, and that like ruined me. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I've given up a lot of things in my life, and coffee was definitely the hardest. And it was, but it's things like that, when now I still know to this day that if I have a coffee at a certain time or I have too much caffeine, that there's a risk if I do X, Y, or Z, that there's potentially a trigger there, just because mentally I know, so if I'm going on a long drive, I don't drink coffee, or if I'm going into a long meeting, I don't drink coffee, because I just know that I've associated the two with that. And it's kind of understanding it, I think, is the most important part, and being able to at least manage it, because it never goes away, I don't think, really, when you've got these things. But I think it's the management of it is the part that's so crucial.
What else did you see, Josh, that really made a difference? Because it sounds like you're not in that place now. Some of the triggers, but is there something that you can identify that made the big difference for you to come out of that time?
I think, to be honest with you, I went to the doctors, and the doctors were, reasonably helpful. I wouldn't say they weren't unhelpful, but I didn't really get the answers that I wanted. I was given beta blockers, for example, and I didn't really ever want to go down that route. Not to say that that's not the route to go down at all, but I just kind of went, I know that there's something that I need to address, and what I don't want to do is necessarily block anything out. What I want to do is understand it so that I can at least start to manage it, which is kind of then what I did. And so it was a bit of a process of elimination. So it was, okay, don't have coffee, or don't go to this meeting, or not don't go, but postpone this meeting, maybe move some things around if I felt like I wasn't going to be in a comfortable situation or anything like that. And actually, funnily enough, what I did at one point is, so I do quite a bit of public speaking for events that we run and things like that. I actually did an event in front of about 100 people, running an event, hosting an event, doing a talk, and hosting a panel. And even that, that was terrifying, because that was like while this was all going on. So, but I'm not normally, intimidated by those things, but while this was all going on, it was like the most terrifying thing. And just going through that and kind of really pushing myself to actually get through it really helped, I think, because I went, actually, a lot of that is in my head. And so doing the things that I knew, and kind of pushing through some of those things that I knew would be a bit of a trigger for me, I do think really helped. And I don't know if that's great advice for people, but it definitely helped me. And I still try and do that. I've always tried to do it, put yourself in a position where you feel slightly uncomfortable anyway. And it does kind of teach you things, and it helps you learn. And it definitely helped me through, I think.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a great example. I love it. And it very much aligns with kind of what I teach in terms of resilience and coming through stress and burnout as well. But it's all a self-created experience.
Absolutely, yeah. And you can just see it, as well. There's some points where you go, I'm not, like, all I've done is think about something, and I'm starting to panic about, and I go, why am I doing that? 2 seconds ago, there was no issue there whatsoever.
Exactly.
I thought about something, and it's in my head, and I try and just completely block it out, or I'll try and think about something else, and I just know that it's just me kind of overthinking things, and it's tough, isn't it? It's tough. I think we've all got something that we need to deal with as people.
Sure.
It makes it. It's part of life, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think it's what you've just shared is a brilliant example of kind of our innate resilience, and also kind of your both wisdom and common sense coming through to help you through a tough time. Can I ask how are things playing out at home during that period? Because I guess for your partner coping with a newborn, it's a really big deal as well, isn't it? And you've got this kind of twin pressure of being there with a new life in your family, and as you said, the baby of your business, which is going through this transition as you moved to Manchester. How is that impacting on your relationship and your partner?
Yeah, it was tough. It was definitely tough. I think having a newborn in a relationship is really tough. We were at a point as well where we'd moved back up this way, but I didn't really know loads of people around here, so I was kind of starting afresh. Really, I had some kind of friends that that were through my partner and who are still our good friends of mine, and really kind of were a great, a great support network for us when we came up. But we didn't have loads of people that we kind of went to see and things, and especially myself. So I think for me that was definitely a bit of a tough one as well, because we kind of had all this new stuff happening. And then sadly at the time my stepfather passed away, which was probably terrible timing around that as well. And so I think there was just quite a few triggers that really kind of all sort of compounded at once that sort of led to that. And then with the business at the time it was such high pressure at the time, I think it just kind of all led up to that point of, where it just, I think I just completely burnt out. And I think there's only so much of a kind of putting on a brave face you can really do, right? And it does, your body tells you things, doesn't it? And especially your head, and I think it was definitely a time for me to really kind of take a step back and reevaluate things. But yeah, I think, if anything, obviously having children and things brings you so close with your partner, and I think she didn't have, my partner Sammy didn't have the easiest time necessarily after we had our first as well, because she unfortunately got quite poorly afterwards, which really knocked quite a lot of things for a couple of weeks. She was in hospital afterwards. So it's those sort of things that then kind of start you off on a footing where you're kind of a bit unsure as to how to proceed with things. Everything's new. There's this worry going on there, and there's all this other kind of stuff happening around. Yeah, it takes its toll. But yeah, I think you've just got to, in terms of from a relationship perspective, what helped us, I think, was we were a lot more vocal about things. And I don't mean we were shouting at each other all the time. We probably were at points, but it was more that we spoke a lot more about things. And while she hates it, she still does. We spoke a bit more about our feelings, right? And what we were thinking, and I still try and do that now, and it does get to the point where it's a bit like, stop asking me how I'm feeling, because I'm fine. But I do like to know how people feel, because I think it's important. I think you can sense when people are off, and obviously what you don't want to do is pry, but at the same time, if you're vocal about it, it really, really helps. And the only reason that I kind of press for that so much now, and I do it with the guys that I work with as well, and sometimes they're like, seriously, I'm fine, just stop asking me. But because I know that by sharing that problem, and you may not want to talk to me about it, but you can talk to anyone about it, but by sharing that problem with people, it really, really helps. And it just helps put perspective on things. And, so by sitting on it and letting it bottle up, I just think it's one of the worst things. So,
I think one of the things I love when we connected, and we were just swapping messages, and you said to me, you were sort of supporting the project I'm doing here, and you said it's great because nobody really asks men how they are. And I think if you're a CEO particularly, right, it can be a lonely place, even if you're really well connected with your team, and you've got that double kind of whammy of leading a company and then having to show up. Your wife's in hospital for 2 weeks, she's got her own stuff going on. You're starting to feel enormous pressure, and it can be a really lonely place to be caught in those two roles. And I wondered, if you wanted to say a little bit more about kind of how I love what you've just shared about asking people how they are, because I think for men, it can be really taboo to say, actually, right now I'm struggling. In the period after our child was born, I went through a really tough time. My partner did as well. We had some issues in the first 6 months, which were difficult for both of us. But I look back at that time and thought, actually, I got quite depressed because I was really used to life being a certain way. And then the adjustment was such a big one. And I don't think I actually really coped with it. I kind of put pressure on myself to be happy, over the moon, excited about being a dad, and that jarred with some of what my experience actually was, because it was really difficult.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And no, it is. And it's, I think it's definitely something that I've kind of seen, especially in this space, is the industry that we're in as well. We're kind of in digital and tech, and actually it can be a really fast-paced sort of industry. you're working in a role that effectively you're trying to help everyone in your business as much as you can, and be that support and be that rock and be that person that, and you know, when you've got X amount of people coming up to you and you're their line, and kind of they're going, oh, I've got this problem at home, or I've got this and I've got that, and you know, you're kind of putting on a brave face, and you know, this is not to say that people shouldn't do that, but you're kind of going, yeah, great, here's my thoughts on it, and you know, have you thought about this, and kind of helping guide people through things. But at the same time, you've also got all your own pressures to deal with, and all your own kind of things that are going on. That, where do you really turn? It's a really tough one, that, because also as well, family, while family are great, you know, they don't really understand what you're talking about, because you're talking about something quite specific. To be an entrepreneur is a very odd place anyway. Not to call myself an entrepreneur, I don't like the term, but to be entrepreneurial and to build a business and to start, it's a very odd place, because you are kind of completely out of the wilderness and you don't really know what to do properly, and you've got people guiding you, and you're kind of trying to get through it. So when you're talking to a family member about that, who's not done that, they don't really understand. So you can't really talk to family about it. Talking to your business partner about it, that's one thing, and obviously that's really important, and that's always been helpful. But you know, sometimes you might just want to have a bit of a vent about the business, and you don't want to do that with your business partner. So who do you then talk to about it? You don't want to talk to your partner, because you don't want to burden them, because they've got their own things that they're dealing with. And so suddenly you end up in this position where you're going, I've got all these things, and there's not really any outlet. And then you go, well, do I go and get therapy, or do I go and get counselling? And I think that's, do you know what? I've never done it. And I always have said, I really want to go and speak to someone. I just want to go and just sit down every month even, or every few weeks, and just go and chat to someone, right? And just about just nothingness and everything and stuff, you know, like, because there's so much that builds up, and you've got so much rattling about in your head constantly, day in, day out, that, and you don't really get an outlet to get that out a lot of the time. So, so there is definitely, I think I would advocate it without even doing it. You know, it's
yeah.
So,
I mean, I imagine there's a particular dynamic for you, just as well, because you know you're in partnership with your brother, right? You know,
yes.
and your sister works in the business, so that's an amazing thing, because there must be a closeness and a trust between you to be able to do that. But you know, where do you go in your relationship with your brother, like when things are kind of tough? Are you because you know, it's not like you can separate your relationship from your business anymore. The two are completely tied together, aren't they?
They are, yeah. And the good thing is that we do, if we're ever at a family occasion, which is rarer than I'd like. And actually, you'd think working together all the time, we see each other all the time. We don't. I probably see him physically maybe twice a month, right? You know, so it's not like I'm in the same space with him all the time. But yeah, it is difficult, and I think what we ended up doing is, so we've got a non-exec director in our business, Jess Gregson, who's fantastic, really, really, and has been great. We've worked together for probably about 2.5, 3 years or so now. So he's been kind of, you know, a part of that board. We've got a guy that acts a bit like an FD for our business as well. So we get financial support and guidance and things there. But I've also got a lot of mentors around, you know, just in terms of people that have over the years become my friends and mates of mine, but who I really consider to be some amazing people and who I get a lot of mentorship from. So, you know, by having that sort of network around has given me a bit more of an outlet to sort of share problems and share ideas and kind of go, oh, I've got a bit of a challenge on this. And doing, again, those 9 Others dinners that I mentioned genuinely are a bit like therapy. They're like business therapy, right? So once a month we go and do that, or once every 5 weeks or whatever it is, we go and do that. And you share problems with people, and actually that outlet in and of itself is fantastic, because you're sat at a dinner with 9 other people who have probably been through similar experiences in the past, who just help you walk it through. And it's a nice approach to it. It's really informal, and it's just a kind of good way of doing it. But in terms of that sort of the loggerhead part, you know, we've also identified quite clearly what are our roles within the organization. So what do I do? What does he do? Which has always been quite crucial. And then it's just making sure that we're both doing best we can in our roles, and then bringing in that third party, it means that we've got a sounding board. So if we are at loggerheads on something, most of the time I'll get my own way. If we are at loggerheads on something, we have got someone there to kind of pass the ideas through to and say, look, we can't make a decision on this. What do you think? And that person then becomes so vital to the ongoing operation. But you have to trust that person implicitly, right? So, but you have to know that they're in it as much as you're in it, and that they've got the best interest for the business. But now our sister's a lot more involved in those sort of conversations as well, and it's so integral to the business as well. So even that now adds a different dynamic. So there's a whole kind of team around us now as well. So we're not the ones really that are always making the final decisions. Actually, we're kind of just going, what do we choose? What is the right way to do it? So over time, building up that kind of pool around us has been fantastic. But definitely getting a non-exec or a mentor or an advisor to sit within the business, we found to be invaluable, absolutely invaluable.
That's really smart. I can see why that would work as a way of diffusing any kind of potential loggerheads, as you say. Yeah. Nice. Just sort of switching tack for a minute, Josh. Like, I've been asking other dads, like, what influence do their own dads have on them as parents, or even in business. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about your relationship with your dad and how that shaped you, for good or bad?
Sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, my dad's always played a really positive part in my life. We're still very close, not geographically. He lives in Devon, I live in Manchester, but we are, we've always been close. My parents divorced when I was about 4, I think. So we always lived in had 2 different kind of locations that our family were in. So distance has never been like the biggest blocker for me. I've always understood that, just because you're not in the same space doesn't mean you don't have those people there. So that was kind of part of that. In terms of our relationship, it's always been really positive. There were probably, throughout my childhood, there's probably been some years where I didn't see my dad as much, just because, of the nature of how it was. But we've always seen each other regularly. And then obviously when you get older, you don't see each other as much, and it's more difficult to stay in touch as regularly as you'd like to. But yeah, no, we've always been really close. I think in terms of our approach, it may be slightly different in terms of us, kind of how we've gone about building our business and things. But always had the support from both my dad and my mum, in terms of sort of building the business. But they don't know enough about it. They don't really understand enough about it. So, while they've always been really supportive of it and kind of proud that we've done things with it, they don't really get it as much as, they might do if it was an industry that they were kind of more familiar with.
Sure. And what about the influence on you as a dad? Because I guess you're pretty young when your parents split, and it sounds like you had a stepfather. Where did he come into your life?
Yeah, sure. So my stepfather came into my life about, I was probably about 12, I think, maybe 11, 12. And came to live with us when I was probably about 14. And we became close, we became very close. Obviously, you live together with someone for such a long period of time. I think we probably lived together until, obviously, sadly, he passed away, actually, about a year after we moved away from the area. But we lived together for a number of years. And obviously that was a kind of a heavy hit to the family. But he taught me a lot as well. He actually helped me set up the business originally and kind of get the original part of the business off the ground in terms of setting up a limited company and doing all of that. But the dynamic was always good between, my dad and him, and they always got on really well. And, because my dad has another partner as well. So, we've always had kind of these 2 sides of the family. So they've always all just got on really well. So it's always been, there's not been a bad environment that we've grown up in at all, from that perspective. But just obviously kind of different locations, as I say, and things. But I think I think from a upbringing perspective, I think probably in the sort of teens, my mum's partner was probably more there in the day-to-day. Obviously saw my dad still very regularly, but probably had more of a say in terms of where may have gone off the rails a little bit in my teenage years, was probably a bit more of a kind of firm hand in that situation to sort of guide me along a bit more of a kind of, to refocus my thinking a bit, I think, which I think probably really helped, actually. I think if it was just left down to my mum to kind of navigate that time, would probably be quite difficult, because obviously the young kids going through things, and you've got all this kind of confusion in your life of not just years of growing up, but you've also got a new stepdad in your life as well, and you're navigating that, and it's all those sort of things that it's hard to kind of understand what an impact that has. But I think then over the years the relationship obviously became a lot stronger, and you end up all becoming a big family, don't you, really? So so yeah, not to say that it didn't come with its challenges, and it's not to say that it was a Walton-esque perfect sort of lifestyle, but it was fine, and all of it. I think in terms of when I look at it, sorry, I probably navigate around the points a little bit. Actually, I've noticed, but in terms of how I think that's probably affected my outlook on things, I think for me, it's to understand that if things did ever go wrong, that you just make sure you've got a good relationship there, for your kids. That's the most important part of it, in terms of their upbringing, and making sure that you don't ever put them in a toxic environment, and to make sure that relationship part does stay the same. And that's really important to know as well. And also on the other side of it is that, I'd love for us as a family unit to be a family unit forever, right? And kind of work towards making sure that we've got that stability as a family, and that we do everything for each other, and that we are kind of all there, and in the same sort of space. And that's why when I mentioned earlier about kind of being present, I think that's quite important for me, is that I am here physically so that the kids see me, and I've got an input in their day to day, and in their kind of life, and help mold them into be the characters that they are when they're older, and kind of be a guide in that. I do want to be here as much as possible for the kids. So again, another point of why working from home and having that split between home and work is so important for me.
Well, I really get that. Well, can I ask you, what does being a father mean to you?
Do you know what? It's honestly the best thing that's ever happened to me. I mean, it's incredible. It really is. I wouldn't say it now defines me, because I think I've got a bit about me that defines me as well, I'd like to think. But do you know what? It really is just the most amazing thing. That sounds so cheesy, and it's like, I'm not even saying that just because I'm on a podcast about being a dad, but I just love it. That they're so funny, the kids are just brilliant, and my daughter's 3 and is challenging and is hard work, but just seeing the impact you have on them positively, and the things that your partner does, and seeing that come out through your kids positively, and just seeing the impact you have on them in terms of how you're kind of bringing them up, and the things you're doing for them, and trying to navigate what you do too much of or what you don't do enough of, and trying to kind of do all of that, and seeing how they kind of build and grow up. And I'm only a few years in, but it's the most amazing thing. It's hard to say, what I, how it defines me, I suppose, really. It's given me a whole new outlook on everything. I think before kids, I'm not to say that everyone is, but I think you're probably more selfish, and you can't be anywhere near as selfish when you've got kids, because obviously it has to be all about them. So you change your outlook on that. You change your outlook on how and where you spend your time. You don't have anywhere near as much free time to do things with. So when you do, you kind of appreciate all of that additional time as well. So I think it's really about, for me, it's about seeing just how much of a positive impact they've had on me as a person and us as a couple, and just, you know, building a family. It's just, yeah, it's your world, isn't it? It becomes everything that you can't remember life pre-kids. You
Right.
just kind of, sorry if I'm not articulating that. It's kind of
I think
hard
you are
to,
beautifully. Yeah. No, you're
it's kind of
definitely
hard to express it almost, you know,
hmm
but, you know, without sounding too cheesy, they are your life,
right.
aren't they? And you know, they really shape you as much as you shape them. And yeah, I think they've made me a much better person as well as I'd like to think that I'm making them good people, you know.
What's been the biggest struggle, would you say, Josh?
In terms of having kids,
Yeah.
um, tough one. I mean, obviously, you know, the balance of running a business and building up a family is tough. You know, undoubtedly, I think definitely pressures on relationships. That is a challenge, and the things that does bring. But again, I think it does make you stronger as people as well, and as a couple, because of the very nature of, you know, you've got so much more at stake as well in life and in a relationship. I think for me, probably one of the biggest struggles is the continual thought that something might go wrong at any point. I know that sounds a bit morbid, but that probably terrifies me more than anything in the world. I'm constantly worrying, and I totally understand now why your parents worried so much about you and your kids, because I do just get that. That's probably the hardest one for me, is like the constant fear that, you know, something bad could happen. And yeah, it's probably not the most positive part, but that is a struggle for me, I think, for sure. Yeah, I'd probably say that's the key thing, really.
Yeah, I think loads of dads listening to this would resonate with what you shared there. I think you just touched on sort of that you know, just sort of wrapping this up a little bit, but that shift in how life gets calibrated, you know, before children and after children, and you know, I think you talked about, well, you can't, life isn't all for yourself, and have you sort of navigated that sort of, you know, where your own time has been, you know, was totally within your own control, and now isn't so much, you know, particularly for me, that was a big tension as I've been working on my business, to feel like I didn't have all the time that maybe I would have wanted ideally, or I could have immersed myself into. Well, how have you dealt with that?
It's a very good question. I think we tried to, when we had our daughter, my first child, my 3-year-old. She, we always said, you know, we'll be those parents that, you know, they live their lives around us. You know, we won't change everything. You know, so we'll still go to the pub, and we'll still go for dinners, and we'll still meet up with friends, and we'll still have people over and all that sort of thing. And we did for a while. You know, we did for as much as we could. You know, within reason. Obviously, it was nowhere near the same as what it used to be. Going to the pub with a baby is not the same as going to a pub with your mates or going out for dinner, obviously. But for the first 6 months, I mean, they pretty much do sit in a pram, and they're pretty happy with everything, right? So you can kind of live business as usual, you know, fairly normally. After that, it obviously becomes a lot more challenging when they want to run around and they want to kind of play and things. But yeah, I think we tried to kind of be more, you know, like, yeah, we'll just kind of not have too much of a strict routine and blah blah. And I think that worked to a large degree, because it meant that we still had a bit of a life. And so it was that sort of transition of being pretty social beforehand, even though we lived up, you know, we'd moved up here and we weren't out with, you know, our social life was still very much being out and about and doing things all the time, and going to different places on weekends, and trying to see a lot of people and staff. And so that transition over a period of time probably was helped by the fact that we still kind of continued to do a lot of those things, just in a much more restricted way, obviously with a baby. And then once that then started to change, you know, you then go, actually, a routine isn't a bad thing. And we don't want, you know, she needs to be in bed now by a certain time and all that. And we probably didn't do that for quite a while, really. And then, you know, we had Louis, who's now was 1 in December. So, you know, what we probably started doing when Georgie was then that little bit older. We were having Louis. We started kind of really getting into more of a routine with things. And now, because of that sort of transitional period over that time, we have got a much more structured life and a much more structured routine, which I never thought I'd really like. But when you've got any anxieties, or when you've got pressures, and when you're doing things on the business, routine is bloody important, right? So actually having that structure has been really, really positive, and it was something that I didn't really think I would. And also, just to jump back slightly on that as well, I think to kind of put it in perspective a bit as well, in terms of how I think kids have kind of impacted me positively as well, is that I think our business has done the best it's ever done. So we're in a fantastic position, and we've grown substantially in the last year. Unfortunately, we don't know what's going to happen with the current climate, but we had projected to do a substantial growth next year as well. And for me, the reason I think because of that is because I've taken my eye off of, I'm probably, to some friends' disappointments, where you're not out as much, or you're not doing things as much, and people will kind of say, well, you're not nowhere near out as much as you kind of once were, because you really do need to focus. And for me, it becomes so important about bringing up the kids, building the business to be a really solid business, making that an investment into our future as a family, giving us stability and giving us some financial structure and sort of long-term investment. And by having the kids, I focused more on the business than I think I ever would have. Genuinely, I don't think I would have ever focused as much as I have done with having the kids, because they've given me a reason to do it. Whereas before it was kind of like, it's just part of the business, it's part of life. Yeah. We probably didn't take it that seriously for the most part in the beginning, and over the last probably 4 or 5 years, we've really knuckled down and got our heads in the zone. And the last 3 years have been, brilliant and very tough, very stressful, but have been the best ever. And so, yeah, there's definitely something to be said about them focusing you and improving you as well as a parent and as a dad. That probably gets overlooked sometimes, I think. But they're just as important for you, I think, as them.
Brilliant. I love that final message, and I think that's one that I haven't heard many other dads talk about, but how that the relationship with your kids refocuses your relationship with your business. It's really interesting.
100%. Yeah.
Josh, it's been a fantastic conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
No worries. Yeah, it's been brilliant. Really, really nice speaking with you. Thank you for that.
And where can we find out more about you if people want to look you up?
Yeah, sure. So you can check out joshbolland.com. That literally links to my LinkedIn profile, or you can go to jbcole.co.uk, which is our main company website.
Brilliant. I'll put that in the show notes. So thanks again for joining me today.
Nice one. Thank you so much. Great speaking with you.